Now, today I'm so proud that Hala Khouri agreed to join us because, first of all, we know each other for quite some time. And second, I just feel she's absolutely amazing in terms of not just as a yoga teacher, but as an activist, social justice, also co-founded Off the Mat into the World, which is a great organization, masters, I think, in somatic psychology, just finishing or just finished a book that I really recommend everybody to read. And so what we're going to do, first of all, hi, hello, so nice for you to be here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, I'm so excited because um, at first, before you teach a class, I want to talk a little bit with you about, first of all, the topic is trauma and resilience, which I think, oh my God, do we need that right now, right?
Oh, yeah.
But also about the social justice situation, also a little bit of the politics, what's going on in the US. I think there's a lot you want to share. So is that okay?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I feel like everything I've been doing in my whole life has led up to this moment for me in terms of feeling like I have some of the tools and the analysis and the skills to meet this super overwhelming time in everybody's lives. And my work has always been at the intersection of trauma and social justice, which is really about understanding that trauma, which is having to deal with terrorizing or overwhelming situations, impact people differently. And, some people are more protected in society than others. And that's really important to consider when we're thinking about trauma. And personal trauma is real, interpersonal trauma is real, but so is systemic and institutionalized trauma. And so in these times where we're looking at what's happening with coronavirus and the way that it's impacting certain communities more than others, it's revealing a lot of the inequalities that exist in our society. And also here in the United States, looking at the Black Lives Matter movement and the murder of George Floyd and the recent case, with Breonna Taylor, and the heartbreaking ways that systemic inequality is revealing itself to those who might not have had to see it before. And so anybody engaged in a consciousness practice, we have to figure out ways to grapple with that, especially if that's not been our lived experience. And I know that for myself, as somebody who has been fairly protected, I mean, I'm Middle Eastern, I'm an immigrant, I have ways that maybe I can be targeted in our culture, but for the most part, I've been protected and I haven't had to think about too many of these things. And so part of a practice that's like a holistic practice of awareness has to include that. So, and then what we're seeing today is also the ways that if we have a spiritual practice or a philosophy about life that wants to deny these inequalities, it ends up fueling things like conspiracy theories or behavior that is really not supportive of the well-being of all people. And so that's been really interesting for me lately to look at these conspiracy theories and what's the difference between critical thinking and questioning the status quo and a trauma response that's not backed with data or information that needs to be examined. So those are all the things I'm thinking about.
Yeah, me too. And actually, let's dive right into that, because what I've noticed over so many years, that often, I think we see this right now in the US also over the last few years, that being in the yoga community, the spiritual community, the health community, right? It's often a certain passiveness in terms of getting involved and really having an opinion and really translating this mindfulness that we try to practice, or really being more aware of things in life, that we actually integrate it into our real life, that we actually share and express that. Do you feel this is now more than important than ever, that we step up our game?
Yeah, now more than ever. And I think that it's easy, a lot of folks who get into yoga or spiritual practice, we're looking for healing, right? We're trying to escape a life that is overwhelming or confusing. But then I think what can happen, and I know I did this, is I found these tools, I found people that were like-minded, and then I just wanted to be with people like me. It felt safer, it helped affirm my beliefs. But then there was a time where then I was dissociating from the larger world. And then I started to dissociate from anything that would make me uncomfortable. And so, you know, a lot of the work, especially that we do it off the mat, is for
So here we go. Now you're back. There was a little break here. Here we go. Now you're back.
For those of us who can use our practice to disconnect, how do we actually make engagement part of our practice? What does it mean to be around people with different beliefs than us, different lifestyles than us, different identities from us? It's easy to be all like zen and peaceful if you're in your insulated little bubble. So I think right now we're seeing with the proliferation of social media and the way that it's working, and the interference, I don't want to get too much into that, but even like, you know, Russian interference and the ways that there are people trying to polarize us. And so we have to stay awake to that manipulation, and really engage with each other from a place of humanity, and use our practice to move towards that discomfort so that we're not disconnecting. It's really important right now. And it you know, here in the United States, like, we're seeing the rise of fascism. We're seeing the rise of a president who's like, you know, threatening to not leave office peacefully if he loses. And our democracy is being threatened. And it's also being threatened because it has had a lot of problems from the past. So I think what's being revealed is, you know, a lot of the problems that social justice activists and environmental justice activists have been talking about for decades is being revealed in a very blatant way. And we really have to take action right now. It's you know, our democracy is on the line and our safety is on the line.
Yeah, and it's very interesting because being in Europe for like many years now, you know, it's also a different perspective than, you know, being right there in the US. And what I notice, which I think is really US, is extreme. The polarization is just extreme. And I think, as you say, the big part of that is social media. You get just stuff that aligns with you and the rest you don't hear, right? It's almost like you say yoga's going to be in their own bubble, right? So we all are in our bubbles, and that's not good, you know, because there's no communication anymore.
Exactly.
So, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, and also just, you know, I think it's social media as well as the news that there's a pressure now because people are so overstimulated that news is being delivered in a very watered down way. I think it's true even on the left, you know, I mean, definitely more on the right, but even I can notice that when I'm getting my news from places that are going to deliver it to me in a way that makes me hate the other side and feel self-righteous, then I'm just contributing, right? I need to be curious about the other side so I can engage it in a grounded way. And this is where a practice can help, a practice of mindfulness, self-reflection, self-regulation, so that we can engage in a grounded way, and not be so attached to our beliefs, but rather be attached to the truth. And that's not easy these days.
Yeah, can you give the audience, the listeners, like a couple tools, you know, especially not just the US, but it kind of plays out the same way in different forms all over the world, to increase that awareness and that behavior. So we basically encourage more communication, even with people that have different opinions. Can you give 2 or 3 tips or practices that really help?
Yeah, so I'll take us through some practices in a moment, but I would say that overall, practices of self-reflection, like really radically honest self-reflection, right? Knowing enough of our own ancestry, our own social location, our own trauma history to know, wow, my nervous system is going to be drawn to particular truths because they really plug into what feels comfortable or safe. When does that serve me and when does that not serve me? So we want to have an awareness of our own temperament, so to speak, so that we can get curious about the beliefs that we're drawn to, and then say, does this actually match reality? Does this match, you know, the other, I think, shadow of yoga spaces and some spiritual spaces is to be fairly anti-science, right? Anti-establishment. And I get it. I don't trust corporations. I don't trust the way that corporate interests might influence what's being researched and how it's being researched. But to throw it all out is not useful and can be very harmful. So how are we also having a critical analysis of science and the information that we are getting, right? So there's like our personal self-reflection and awareness. There is critical thinking around the data and the information that's available to us. And then action. What is our particular form of action or activism? Everybody has their piece to do. We can't do all of it. If we think we have to fix the world, we're going to be immobilized by that. So self-awareness practices and self-regulation practices, if they don't come first, what'll happen is we're going to be engaging with the world, engaging with the information from our own trauma response. So, I always say, if you're in a trauma response, it's going to be very, very hard to read the world accurately.
So let's move on to that trauma response, because that's kind of like in the intro when we talked before we started. We're talking about this, that part of what we do at Lifestyle Prescription University, which is my main focus these days, is very much about how trauma and stress affects our health and actually affects very specific organ tissue, right? And going between this fight-flight, the two phases, fight-flight, sympathetic and parasympathetic, and I think it plays out right now. You can see it everywhere with Corona, with a lot of the other stresses we have, even with social media. We're so hyped up in a constant fight-flight response. Can you talk about that and how also some ideas, some tips, some ways to step out of that?
Absolutely. Well, there's a response to stress that only started getting studied about 20 years ago in the research, and it's called the tend and befriend response, right? So fight or flight is one reaction to stress where we want to separate or fight. That's what we're doing now. We're in a collective fight or flight. But there's another response, the tend and befriend response, which is when we meet stress with wanting to reach out, to extend our care, to protect one another. That's the response we want to cultivate. We don't need to be in a resting response. I mean, we are in crisis, right? But how do we change our response to stress to one of connection rather than separation? And that's what I really see as, in the United States, the political divide. We have one side that says, you're on your own. We should take care of ourselves. And if you're not okay, that's because you didn't work hard enough. Don't take my stuff. Don't take my jobs, right? That's a fight-flight response. And a lot of us, our survival gets kicked up and we can feel that. So how do we train ourselves to reach out and connect when we're stressed? To reach out and care for one another. One of the biggest debates that's happening here in the US, and I think in other places, is this idea of individual sovereignty of our health, right? But, freedom is something we do together. It's not something we hoard to ourselves. And, in many places, the question is, who gets to be free, right? So it's about the tend and befriend response, cultivating that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And something we all need to work on these days. And I think that's where yoga mindfulness is so important, because it helps us to create a little distance from all these reactive patterns that we might be running otherwise.
Exactly.
So should we, again, maybe we could talk forever, right? Because it's just a topic that I'm so interested in. I know you are super interested in. I know a lot of people looking for solutions. But today, I hope maybe you can teach a national at the university at some point. That would be wonderful. Today, you said you're going to have a practice about 20 minutes or so that really guides people through a process to raise that resilience, right?
Yes. We'll go through a practice. And, I know a lot of people listening maybe already practice yoga, or some people are brand new to it. But what I really want to bring is, how do we bring a specific way of paying attention in our bodies that can help us regulate our nervous system? So I can take us through a short practice, and you can apply these principles to whatever physical practice you do. Okay,
perfect. So I'm going to hand it over to you, and I guess we're going to be back in about 20 minutes or so, right?
Okay, yes, wonderful.
20, 25, whatever that is. Have fun. Everybody watching, enjoy.
Thank you. So I'm going to invite you to start by finding a comfortable seated position. And you can be in a chair if you like, or sitting on the floor like I am sitting. And find a way to create as much length in your spine as feels available. I'm sitting on a cushion right now. That can help. And then take a moment to find the places in your body that are touching the chair or the cushion or the ground. So we always like to begin with grounding. So grounding energy is about feeling solid in your body, solid in your environment, supported. You may not feel grounded right now. That's okay. We're going to try to find grounding in the practice. So we can start by noticing those areas touching the ground, noticing the places in your body where there's weight. We can also ground through the arms. So you can take your hands and squeeze up and down your arms. And I want you to just notice in the exercises I offer you, which ones feel like they settle you a little bit? Are there some that you're clear you don't like? Stay curious about what might work for your nervous system, what might work for you. And what we're looking for, again, is the breath maybe deepening or tension settling, even if it's just very subtle, very subtle. And then release your hands and let them rest on your legs. And with a little bit of pressure, not so much that it feels like you're gripping, but just a little bit of pressure. And just take a moment to go inside and scan your sensations. You can close your eyes if you want. You can just soften your gaze. And without any judgment, we want to try to not judge our experience, but rather with curiosity, notice. What sensations do you feel in your body? Are there any particular emotions present for you right now, or a particular mood? Notice what's happening in your heart, your gut, your throat. And again, if you begin to judge, just try to come back to curiosity. And as I take you through these next exercises, keep checking in. What happens on a sensation level in your body? Does your mood shift? Some of this stuff will really settle you and feel good. Some of it might activate you, okay? Next thing is I want you to go ahead and look around the space that you're in, noticing the colors and the textures that you see, and move your head when you're doing this. I don't want you to look for things that you want to organize or clean up, but rather just taking in colors and textures. Notice what this is like in your body. Does it settle you? Does it activate you? This is called orienting. So for some of us, when we physically orient to present time, it can help our nervous system settle. So often when we're feeling anxious or afraid or even depressed, it's because we're anticipating something bad. We're in the future or we're in the past. So getting our senses into present time can help us settle a little bit. Then I'm going to invite you to place one hand on your heart, one hand on your solar plexus. And start to notice your breath. Does the breath feel held? Does it feel deep? By placing your attention on your breath, does it change? So remember, I'm not asking you to change anything just yet, but rather we're just checking in, taking stock. And then we'll explore working with the breath. Start to intentionally deepen your breath. Try to let the inhales and the exhales be about the same length. If you feel that trying to control your breath kicks up your anxiety, then don't work with the breath that way. Rather, just be with the breath as it is. Okay, so breath can be an amazing tool to regulate ourselves, but it's not everybody's tool all the time. Grounding is better for some folks. Staying oriented in your space might be better for some folks. So if you're working with breath, just a few more rounds here. Let the inhales and the exhales be about the same length. And then when you're ready, release your hands. And if your eyes were closed, go ahead and open them. We'll take a few simple stretches here. And the main thing that I'm inviting you to pay attention to here is trying to stay connected to your resource. So the resource is something that's grounding. The resource is something that supports us to stay present. Resource can be a breath. It can be something in the room that you let yourself look at, okay? So we're gonna bring the left hand to the floor next to you. You can also use a block and the right arm up. First thing I want you to do is make sure you're staying grounded. So keep those sit bones rooting down, especially the right one. And then I want you to find your sense of center. So a little bit of engagement in the lower belly to support the low back. So we ground and we center first, and then we explore the stretch. So if we're not grounded or centered, we'll fall over or we could injure ourselves. It's also not regulating to the nervous system. And so now as you're exploring the stretch, you might be breathing deliberately, you might be using your breath as your resource, or you might observe the breath as it changes spontaneously. And we don't want to go too far. We want to find the place in the stretch where you can stay present with your sensations. You can take the top arm up and let it go back a little, flex the hand and let the head go. We carry a lot of stress in the neck. Slowly turn your gaze down a little bit. And then come back to center. Reach the right arm over the ear. Take one more breath here. And then slowly come on up. And then just see what your body wants to do. Notice if energy moves from that right side. And then we'll take the right hand to the floor and the left arm up. Get grounded, root down through your sit bones, find your center, and then extend. Try to greet your sensations with your breath. What we're trying to do in a practice to build resilience is try to keep our mind in our body. We're not trying to escape. We're trying to be more fully present without being overwhelmed. Let's take the top arm up and open it back. You can flex the hand back if you want. Let the head go. And then turn the head a little bit. Notice what's happening in your jaw and in your throat. And then reach the arm over the ear one more time. Find the edge that makes sense in your body. And then let's come on up. And then just notice what you feel and what your body might want to do. We're going to take a couple more stretches on our backs. You can also do these seated if you prefer. Otherwise, I'm going to invite you to lay down on your back. Take your feet wide and your knees together. Hands can be on your body or alongside your body. Take a moment to feel into all the places in your body making contact with the ground. One thing that we're looking for as we're doing a practice geared towards regulating the nervous system is the involuntary nervous system response. So the ways that you might settle spontaneously. We can't really make ourselves relax, but we can let our body feel supported enough so that tension begins to release. And then hug your knees into your chest and rock a little bit side to side. And then let the knees drop over to your left side. Right arm can reach out to the right. Let the elbow bend. And then really slowly turn your head side to side. Don't force. Notice which part of the movement feels good for you. Take one more deep breath here and then sigh it out. And come on back to center. Excuse me. Take a breath here and then drop your knees over to the right side. Left arm goes out to the left. And I like to put my fist between my knees or my hand. It creates just a little bit of space. And it reduces the tension, the intensity a little bit. And then slowly turning the head. So, you know, in the practice, we want to have discipline, right? The discipline to find alignment that is safe, but we also want to leave room for some spontaneity in the body. Otherwise, the yoga practice becomes about a lot of control. And if we're using it to just control ourselves, we can actually increase our tension because we're not trusting our natural impulses in our body. Let's come back to center. Plant your feet on the floor and tilt the pelvis forward and back. We'll take a simple hamstring stretch here. Extend your right leg up. You can use a strap around the ball of your foot or simply hold on to the back of the leg. Bend your knee and then extend and bend a few times. And then extend and find that first edge of stretch in your body. And some of you, your leg might be out here. Everybody's going to look different here. And then try to, as you're noticing probably some sensation in the back of your right leg, try to also feel your back against the floor or your breath. In so many ways, this practice is about learning to be with discomfort without running away from it. When we can stay with what's uncomfortable, often it will settle. And even if it doesn't settle, at least being able to be with something can take us out of overwhelm. Oftentimes when we're trying to get away from something, that increases our anxiety because we have the thing that's uncomfortable and then the running away behaviors. Rotate your ankle around a few times in each direction. So we practice with our body, right? We practice being present with sensations in our body and then point and flex. And then hopefully that extends with our capacity to be with discomfort in the world and address it in a really grounded, reasonable way. So try it with your hamstring and then you can try it with global politics or the pandemic, right? But right now, keep it simple. Let's cross the right ankle over the left knee, flex the foot, press the knee away from you. If you're getting a good stretch, stay here. If you're not, you need to, you can draw the left leg in towards you. And then again, once you find the edge you want to work with, then we're going to play with trying to stay regulated in the face of the discomfort. Can I stay connected to my breath? Can I stay in present time, even while it's uncomfortable? You might find that rocking your body allows you to do that. You don't have to be perfectly still. Some of you will want to close your eyes. Let's take a few more deep breaths here. Go to one more deep breath and then give it a sound. Release your legs and uncross them. And then the left leg will extend. You can hold on to the back of the leg or use a strap or a towel. Flex the foot, bend the knee, and extend and bend a few times. So remembering our work is to try to stay in our bodies with curiosity, with compassion. Rotate the ankle around a few times. Building our nervous system so that it can deal with whatever life brings us without being overwhelmed or reactive. Point and flex a few times. And then flex the foot, find the edge you want to work with. And then in many ways your practice begins. The practice of being present with discomfort without going into a stress response. So we're training our nervous system here. One more breath. And then cross the left ankle over the right knee. Stay here if you're getting a good stretch, or draw the right leg in towards you. The other thing that my practice often reminds me is that we all have in our own bodies and our own nervous system a deep impulse towards healing. That impulse can get thwarted with trauma, with overwhelm. And in many ways, our practice is a reclaiming and a remembering, a freeing up of that natural healing impulse. So look for the ways that your body might settle. Look for the ways that you might be releasing or integrating. When we're overwhelmed, we're just going to look for cues that validate our overwhelm. So allow both in. Also look for cues that might validate that you're supported in this moment. Let's take 2 more full breaths here. And then release and uncross the legs. Tilt your pelvis forward and back a little bit here. And we're going to spend the last few minutes actually doing some stability work. And so it's not just about releasing tension, but building stability in the body. So plant your feet on the floor and lift your hips up, maybe halfway towards bridge. I want you to really feel the action of pressing down into the feet to lift. And this should engage your thigh muscles. Let your shoulder heads be heavy. And again, a little bit of centering in the belly muscles. Now you can stay here, or you can extend your right leg here. Try to keep your knees lined up. Really ground through the left leg. And then release the right foot down and extend the left leg. Really ground through the right leg. We can do 2 or 3 more of these. Invoking grounding in the legs here, building support in the body. So you can keep going, you might be resting. Feel for what your body needs. Maybe you do 1 more set here. And then pause for a moment. If it feels good, you can reach your arms overhead. Take a deep inhale and then lower down 1 vertebrae at a time and bring the arms down. Now from here, we'll do a little centering. Lift your feet up off the floor. Press your sacrum into the floor, and that should help you find your low belly muscles, okay? So I like to think of these as centering exercises rather than like an ab workout, right? This is about building our capacity to be centered in ourselves rather than centered in external events. That can be very, very frustrating and overwhelming. So you want to feel your sacrum pressing into the floor and engagement in the low belly. And if this is intense enough, you'll stay right here. Next option is to extend your right leg at a diagonal or let it come down a bit. And then pull it in and switch sides. So we're trying to find a way to be moving the body without losing our sense of center. Sometimes it helps to keep your hands on your low belly. And for a lot of us, we have to detoxify this idea that when we're centering, that it has something to do with weight loss or body shape. Like that's very toxic messaging that's actually very disempowering. So this is not about shaping our bodies, but rather building a sense of center both physically on a muscular level and energetically. Okay, so we'll do this for about 1 more minute. Next option here is to interlace your fingers and lift your head and continue here. I want you to add in your breaks. If you start to feel like you're losing connection with your breath or your back is hurting you, you rest and come back. And really that's the practice. About 10 more seconds here. Find a pace that makes sense in your body. Good, last few. 1 more to each side. And then release and bring it down. We're going to flip over onto our bellies. Make your way into Sphinx Pose with the elbows underneath your shoulders. And then press into the forearms to create some space here. Let the chin drop. Make sure the back of the neck feels spacious. And with your nose, I want you to trace an infinity sign here. Go in both directions. And then lower down, slide your hands under your shoulders, elbows pull in. 3 times we're going to lift and lower into Cobra Pose. One more time. Good. Curl your toes under. Come on up. Sit back into an active child's pose. So with the toes curled under, arms reaching. Take a few breaths here. Feel the sense of grounding through the arms and the hands. And then let's come up and find our seat together again. Grab a cushion if you like. And just take a moment here. Notice the effects of that short practice. Notice if you feel a little bit more grounded, if anything feels a little bit more settled. Notice if anything has emerged that you weren't aware of before. And then when you're ready, let's bring our hands to prayer at our hearts. Bowing down. I always like to pray that my practice allows me to be more compassionate, more integrated, more resilient. May this practice be a reminder of our deepest connections. And may we practice in a way that is for the collective liberation and healing of all beings. Let's take one more very deep inhale and exhale. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you so much, Hala.
My pleasure.
That was wonderful. I was practicing with you. Thank you, really. First of all, thank you for supporting National Yoga Month, for teaching the class to our audience, and just for your amazing work. So keep it going.
Thank you so much. Thank you for
Speak loud. A lot of people need to hear this. I mean, not here in the class, but in general, right?
Yes. I will. Thank you so much for having me, Johannes. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. See you soon, hopefully. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.